to a very interesting topic that for the last couple of decades now has become more and more of a conversation at the water cooler and in Thanksgiving dinners, I'm sure. It's my pleasure to introduce our two debaters. I will start with Trent England, who serves currently as the Executive Vice President at the Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs, where he is also the David and Ann Brown Distinguished Fellow, and he directs the state Save Our States project. He is an adjunct fellow at New Mexico's Rio Grande Foundation. Trent holds a law degree from George Mason University and a bachelor's degree of arts in government from Claremont McKenna College. Where is that, Trent?
Southern California.
Southern California, that's right. You said you dealt with Los Angeles traffic. He currently lives in Oklahoma City, where I lived for quite a long time and actually met my wife. He lives there with his wife and 3 children. Trent, as you probably have deduced, will be debating for the Electoral College. Trent, thank you for coming out today.
Thank you.
Kyra1 has a bit of a home team advantage, but that's okay. She's lived in Aspen for 6, 7, how long?
Since I was 10.
Since you were 10. So Kyra is a graduate of the University of St. Andrews with honors in international relations and economics. That's a mouthful. A lifelong debater, she was one of the only people to double qualify for the Parliamentary World's Debate Tournament in high school. And in college, she followed that up by becoming the first place speaker at her first year at St. Andrews Maiden Debate. That's very impressive. A former intern at the Washington think tank New America, Kyra worked in the International Security Department under Peter Bergen. She is interested in politics, minority rights, and music. So well-rounded Aspenite, that's for sure. Kyra, thanks for, as Jennifer said, coming in and filling in on short notice on this. So with that, we will start with a poll of the audience first to see how this is going to go. I would like to see by a show of hands, who prefers the national popular vote? All right, so that's a good number. And I will assume the rest of you, but please by a show of hands, who prefers the Electoral College, the current version that we have? Wow, there we go. All righty. Well, with that, I think we will start with the inevitable question, and I'll let Trent, or I'm sorry, we have opening statements, and then I'll get into my litany of questions. We're going to let each person here have a quick opening statement about what they believe in and why. Kyra, since she is the home team person and had to fill in so quickly, Kyra will let you start with the MVP.
Thank you so much, and I'm so happy to be here, even if I might be a little nervous. So I want to start with a quote, which is, "The surface of American society is covered with a layer of democratic paint, but from time to time we can see the old aristocratic colors breaking through." That was done by Alexander de Tocqueville in his novel Democracy in America back in 1835, but I think we can still take some of that when we talk about these issues today. So to understand, or when I was trying to understand the debate around the Electoral College, I found it necessary to break it down into sort of the 3 main reasons why the framers created the Electoral College the way they did, and maybe why those reasons have changed for our society today. So the first is sort of the least relevant reason that we're going to be talking about, which is that it had to do with the electors. And the electors were considered the most knowledgeable people to find the candidates for president, which is also why the electors had to live in the capitals of each of the states. So if the president died the day he was supposed to become president, you wouldn't have to send a horse to both Toledo and Columbus, Ohio. You just have to send it to Columbus, Ohio, so that the elector would know that that happened. But clearly, with the scope of the dissemination of media that we have in our society today, this idea is sort of ridiculous. We can figure out everything within a 24 news cycle, and there's not one person who is necessarily more informed than anybody else in our political system, and I think we pride our public on knowing this and voting. So the second is definitely the more applicable problem that we're faced with. And that's the idea of the hegemony of political decisions by the largest states in the Union. This argument is also where the current debate around the Electoral College is framed. If the coasts have the largest percentage of the population, then why do we need to care about the rural states when electing the president? The states that provide the heartbeat, the food, and the sustenance to our great nation as we know it today. But I find this to be a bit of a misnomer. First, at least coming from Scotland, I found that there's always these divisions that are created in our country for no reason. The coasts contribute a massive amount to the economy and culture of our great nation in the same way that the rural states do. And the argument of rural versus urban undermines the connection that we have with each other as Americans. Neither group should have their social values be overrepresented within our political system. And because our country is not about imbalance and preferential treatment, but about equality, as Aristotle once said, democracy arises out of the notion that those who are equal in any respect are equal in all respect, that we should want to promote this equality over inequality. The other problem with this notion is the way that presidential campaigns in the past have been run. Certainly, it has not been the presidential candidates are running to all the small states in the United States, trying to best represent the concerns of those populations. But rather, the Electoral College has created a battleground phenomenon in which only states which have the potential of swinging one way or another are given importance. One of the most glaring examples of this is the preferential treatment given to Florida. Florida is the 4th largest state in the United States, and yet much more time and attention is given to that population than small states like Alaska, North Dakota, Wyoming, or Louisiana. If the Electoral College was effectively protecting the voice of rural Americans, then why is it ignoring most of rural America in favor of these indecisive purple populations in our swing states? So this ultimately brings me to my final and most important point, which is why the Electoral College was enacted in the first place. And this was to protect against the tyranny of the majority. Certainly, this is an inherent problem of democracy that political scientists, philosophers, and people in think tanks still grapple with every day. However, with rising regularity, we're seeing that the Electoral College has the potential of instead protecting against the tyranny of the majority to extolling and securing a similar tyranny of the minority. An NBC article cites that in 7 elections since 1992, the Republican candidate has won the popular vote just once, but has won the Electoral College 3 times. This trend is showing the increasing regularity in which the predominant social ideas of the time are being usurped by a minority because of an antiquated system. I think it's important here not to look at this matter as a purely political one. This is not about having more public support, but rather that we're not listening to the majority of our population. According to the majority of voters, the ideas of the Republican Party need to evolve. Not that they're wrong, but that they're shielded from progress and change by a system that advantages a winner in a take-all electoral system. The National Popular Vote initiative in Colorado and around the United States, along with the idea of one person, one vote, is much more fitting to the America that we live in today. The National Popular Vote bill would guarantee that the presidency to the candidate who receives the most popular votes across all 50 states and the District of Columbia. And as a country that values equality and freedom as paramount to our foundation, we shouldn't value certain people's votes over others. And it also wouldn't be just good for Democrats. All the Republicans in California who have given up on voting because they know that their vote doesn't matter anymore will suddenly feel heard. Their vote will count again, and their participation in democracy will matter. There's a reason why voter turnout is 50% greater in swing states than it is in heavily red or blue states. So there is no doubt that the Constitution is one of the greatest political documents in the world. But it was not written in stone, and even the writers guaranteed that it shouldn't be by allowing space for amendments. Just as politics has evolved since the 1700s, our systems in which we elect our politicians should not be above consideration and change. Thank you.
Thank you.